Hey, greetings everyone from our home to yours. I hope this finds you safe and well. Happy Sunday and a very happy new year. I hope and pray that 2026 will be a year where you are wonderfully blessed. In 2024, I started a journey of trying to find Jesus everywhere in the Bible, or finding Jesus throughout the Bible. And that took me all the way through 2025. And so each week with you, I looked through each book of the Bible, looking for what I call breadcrumbs, but types, foreshadows, allusions, and even metaphors of Jesus throughout the Bible. We made it most of the way through the Old Testament, and I learned a whole lot from that journey, as I hope you did as well. But a few weeks ago, I was listening to a podcast, and it was just a podcast about theology, and the people on that podcast said something about the authorship of the Gospel of John, or the book of John, that made me start thinking. It's not that what they said bothered me, it just was something different. And so I started reading John again. I have done Bible studies out of the book of John, or the Gospel of John, and I've preached sermons from different passages from John, but I've never preached through the book of John, verse by verse, line by line. And so this is going to be kind of a challenge. I do believe that John probably has the best theology about Jesus that's written in the New Testament or in the Bible. You could argue about Paul all that you want, but a lot of Paul's theology is about the church, not so much about Jesus or how the church sees Jesus. But John has a theology of Jesus that I think is so important. I think it's going to be a challenge, but I feel that I have to preach through the book of John. So it's the beginning of a new year, the beginning of a journey, a new Bible journey, I guess. And so that's a good lead into our book of John, because John starts out his gospel in the beginning. Now, this series is going to be called The Story of Jesus According to John. And to John, Jesus' story starts out, well, like I said, in the beginning. John chapter 1, verses 1 and 2 says this, and I'll be reading from the Christian Standard Bible. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning." So right away, John is letting us know that something very important is being said and something very important has happened. He is calling us back not only to the beginning of our timeline and our story, but back to the beginning of what we call the Bible. In Genesis 1:1, it says, "In the beginning, God." I mean, those words are powerful. And think about reading that if you were opening up a novel. In the beginning, God. Then it goes on to record all the things that God did in the beginning. And now John is saying that in the beginning was the Word, or in the beginning, the Word. And the word comes from the Greek word logos. And so what John is saying was in the beginning, logos, which may have not been as powerful to us because we use the word, but that was a very powerful word to the people listening, to the people reading. I mean, really the question becomes, why is Jesus the Word? I mean, to us, using the word doesn't seem like that big of a deal, doesn't seem that important, but it is a huge deal. And that's what John is trying to get across, of how big and how important Jesus coming to earth is, or was. We would say what John's trying to get across is that Jesus is a really big deal. And by using the word logos, he paints enough importance and greatness and spectacularness into the picture that he's painting of Jesus. And he's using a word that would grab the attention of his Jewish listeners or his Jewish readers, because in using the words in the beginning, logos, he is linking the Old Testament into the New Testament. And what he's trying to do is link Christianity and Judaism. And I know that there's a whole lot of theology behind that. And what I'm trying to say is he's not trying to preach one over the other, or he's not trying to place one over the other. He's trying to show where Jesus was the bridge between. For Jews, he's connecting the New Testament. For Christians, he's connecting the Old Testament. And like I said, he's not trying to make us choose one over the other. He's trying to unite them. And to make this even stronger, the word logos, even though whoever translated this had to make a word choice, pun intended, they use the word logos, meaning word, but it can mean multiple different things. It can mean an event, a deed, an action, reason, or wisdom. Now, for Jewish listeners, when they heard that, what John was telling them was that Jesus was the personification of wisdom. To them, wisdom, based on the works of Solomon and how their culture was was very important to them. And so when Jesus said, in the beginning, Logos, he was saying, in the beginning, wisdom was there. And so that's the bridge, the connection. That's the word that he's using to the Jewish people to get them to focus their attention on who Jesus is. So for them, reason and wisdom personified in Jesus. But to us Christians, John is telling us something as well with that word, because the word is so loaded with meaning. And that's what he's trying to say, is that Jesus surpasses the limits of our words, and that he could only pick out and could only use one word that meant so many things that he could use to point us to the greatness and the spectacularness of Jesus being born and coming to earth. And that is, Jesus is the event of all events. His deeds, his actions in creation, his actions in his life, and even the actions of his death and resurrection. He is all of those things. So he's not just the word and we hear it as a word. He is the word. He is Logos. He is actions and deeds. He is the event. He is the singularity of creation. He is. And I'm just not doing any justice to the words that John was trying to use to portray Jesus. I just don't have the ability to do that. But maybe this will help. Jesus' disciples, his followers, those that would go on to become apostles and become martyrs, dying for their faith in Jesus, each one of the four gospel writers talk about Jesus differently. Matthew portrays Jesus as the king, not a king, but the king. Mark portrays Jesus absolutely as the Christ, the anointed one, the Messiah. Luke also portrays Jesus as a king. But John, well, he portrays Jesus from the very beginning as God. He is, throughout his gospel, portraying, writing about the deity of Jesus. And so from the very beginning, John points us all the way back to the beginning, using a word that means so much more than a word to indicate that Jesus is God. And maybe the takeaway of this is not so much the word that John used, but rather how we live so that words are not important. I think that's John's goal, to prove that Jesus is God, so that we will live as he is God. And we as his followers should live that we don't have to say a word. We will live living out the hope that we have before us, that Christ is coming back for us. So this week, and for every week beyond, may we live our lives in such a way that our deeds, our actions, and our words are such that people see Jesus through us. Grace and peace to you. God bless you. Have a great week.